Today on CityCast Pittsburgh, we're taking a peek behind the curtain with the man whose job is going backstage. For a few years now, Boaz Frankel has made it his mission to be Nebby, an aspiration that we align with deeply here at CityCast. Today, we're finding out what it takes to create Yinzer Backstage Pass. It's Wednesday, January 24th. I'm Megan Harris, and here's what Pittsburgh's talking about. Hey, Boaz, welcome to CityCast Pittsburgh. I am so glad we are finally making this happen.
Oh my gosh, I'm so glad to be here. I feel like we should be doing a Yinzer Backstage Pass. Here's the secret. We're not in the same room, first of all.
We are not. We are behind the scenes in our own spaces. You have a nice librarian pupper behind you.
Yes, I do. Yeah, Kip's here just to make sure nothing weird happens.
And I am in my at-home closet. It's amazing. Most people don't know this, of course, but you and I actually share some part-time office space downtown. But somehow this is your first time actually on the podcast, on microphone.
Yeah, longtime fan, first-time guest.
I feel that. Well, the most important questions first, of course. Your Wikipedia, you have a Wikipedia. It says that you are the curator of the Kazoo Museum and own one of the largest kazoo collections in the world. Please tell me about that.
I think you're confusing me with the other Boaz Frankel, actually. No, that is me.
I was about to say, wait, is there two?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure there are two, but...
There is. I know of three in the world.
Wow.
Including me that I know of. But yes, I'm a big kazoo fan. I've been playing kazoo for years. Have a large kazoo collection, which eventually morphed into a kazoo museum, which is now being housed in Beaufort, South Carolina at the Kazoo Museum there, which is attached to the Kazoo Factory.
Oh my, so is that where your personal collection lives, or do you have a few here in Pittsburgh with you?
Well, of course, I've got a few, but yeah, most of the collection is down in South Carolina now. The museum's been there for probably about like 13 or 14 years, but we redid it like 2 years ago, and it looks incredible. If you're ever in the Beaufort area, it's one of the top rated things on TripAdvisor down there. It's fun.
You are full of surprises, but you have other interests, of course. A lot of folks here in Pittsburgh know you for being a correspondent for Pittsburgh Today Live, and you're coming up on 100 episodes of Yinzer Backstage Pass for the website Next Pittsburgh. How does it feel? You've been doing this for over 2 years now. How did it all get started?
Well, it started as sort of something a little more amorphous. We didn't know what it was going to be, but we were like, well, let's try doing some video for Next Pittsburgh. I was talking to them over there, and they were game to do some video. So, initially it was pretty generic. We called it Out and About. We were sort of somewhere else every day and chatting with folks about events going on. But every once in a while, we'd do like a behind-the-scenes thing, and that was just way more fun and interesting. And then we started sort of tossing around the name Yinzer Backstage Pass, and we were like, well, what if we just sort of morph into that? And so it sort of became Yinzer Backstage Pass because I don't know. I think I'm just a curious person, and that just like really appealed to me. And like, oh, this is cool. Maybe with this sort of show, we could convince people to open some doors that aren't normally open, or let us explore some underground tunnels. And it is wild. We've been doing it so long. Now with this sort of anniversary we're celebrating, I've been going back, and I'm like, I don't even remember going there. And it's like sort of a surprise to me, some of the places we've been.
How does that feel to kind of look back a little bit and take it all in?
It's bizarre. I mean, it does feel sort of like out of body because I'll be watching some old footage as I put it together, and I'll just forget that we went somewhere, or met someone, and it feels like there's like a foggy dream that's coming to me or something. Just because we have, met so many people and gone so many places over the past few years, and it's just really an honor also that so many people have trusted us to go behind the scenes. I think when we first started, we didn't exactly know what we were doing. And then Next Pittsburgh was well known for its sort of written pieces, but hadn't done any video. And so, it's sort of very cool that eventually now people are calling us. It was like a few months ago, like Falling Water emailed and was like, hey, do you want to come do a Yinzer Backstage Pass here? And I was like, I wouldn't even have the guts to email you to ask. So the fact that you're emailing me and asking if you want to come, like, oh my gosh, absolutely. Like, what an honor.
What brought you to Pittsburgh in the first place?
It was totally random. My wife and I grew up on the West Coast, but my wife and I had been living in Amsterdam for a couple years, and we knew we needed to move back to the States for work. We weren't sure where. We honestly just heard good things about Pittsburgh, and so we were like, well, let's just go for a weekend and check it out because we were going to be in the U.S. anyways. So we came for a weekend. I emailed a couple people. I actually got lunch with Rick Seaback on that day, and I got a coffee with David Highfield from KDK. So it was
Just
sort of
casually meeting Pittsburgh celebrities.
Yeah. Well, everybody was so nice because I emailed. I was like, I like the work you're doing. Could I just talk to you about, what's happening in media in Pittsburgh? And everyone was so nice, and we had a great weekend, and we're like, okay, let's move here.
What was it about, kind of those conversations that convinced you? Or was it the city itself? Was it some aspect, some magical quality?
It was a few things. People were so friendly. Brooke, my wife, will often recall this moment. We were walking around East Liberty and looking for Trader Joe's. And we were sort of looking around, and the man was running really fast, just taking a run, wearing, running gear, whatever. And he stopped. And he was totally out of breath. He was like, "You look like you need directions to somewhere. Can I help you?" We're like, "Oh, we're looking for Trader Joe's." He was like, "Yeah, it's over here. Just turn over there and then right straight." But it was just crazy. He was in the middle of his run and just stopped because we looked a little confused, maybe, which was just what a nice thing.
Yeah. I like that your love for Pittsburgh was born from grocery stores. That feels sort of appropriate, weirdly. It's like an intimate thing, right? What is it about all these places and spaces you've been behind the scenes of that, you think maybe fuel you, as you've been carrying on this series over the years?
Well, you just never know what you're going to find behind the next door. I mean, it's just every time I'm still shocked. We're going through a house a few weeks ago on the north side of the Parador Inn, and then the guy opens the door and there's a huge safe behind it. It's just and you just never know. Or they're just "Hey, there's a basement. Can we go downstairs?" You're like, "Sure." And then, there's just always something weird and exciting, and there's a fun story that goes along with it. So I think it's just, there's just an element of surprise still. It can never be boring, you know?
I feel like one of the beautiful things about the series is that you really are kind of a conduit for the everyman, but with so much more joy and physicality that a lot of us might be comfortable displaying. It's great.
I'm just always delighted.
Yeah, no, it's so much fun. I don't know if you've gotten a chance to kind of reflect on all of that. Actually, this show just celebrated its second birthday, too, a couple of weeks ago.
Happy birthday.
Thank you. I'm curious if Yinzer Backstage Pass has changed your relationship to the city at all, because you are getting this window into so many different cool places and getting to show other people about it, too.
I mean, I'm so much more knowledgeable about Pittsburgh. I mean, I feel like I've learned, so much about city history and geography just through all these segments. Today I was at KDKA and we were doing a trivia segment where somebody was quizzing us on Pittsburgh history trivia, and I was competing against Mikey Hood, who's on KDK and a lifelong Pittsburgher, and I beat her in Pittsburgh trivia, and I think that is only because of Yinzer Backstage Pass, just because they had sort of obscure Pittsburgh history, and it was all oh, actually, when I visited the Kentucky Museum of Natural History, I remember learning that. It felt like I was on Slumdog Millionaire or something, where it was all these things we'd done on Yinzer Backstage Pass happened to be these trivia questions on the show. So yeah, I mean, I feel like it's given me a crash course in Pittsburgh history.
Do you have any favorite fun facts to impart to the people?
Yeah, I mean, one thing I learned the other day is where Pittsburgh's Doppler radar is. It's sort of a thing you hear all the time on the news, but it's what is Doppler radar? What is a Doppler radar? And
I don't think I realized it was a physical thing.
Oh, it's an
this
object.
Is already new territory.
It's a giant white orb on a metal tower in Moon Township. That's our Doppler radar, and it's on the property of the National Weather Service and the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration.
NOAA, yeah.
on their property there, and we visited it. And so that is a fun fact. And the reason that Pittsburgh's Doppler radar is located in Moon Township is because a Doppler radar can only sense what's around it. And so if you had a Doppler radar in the middle of Pittsburgh, it would be able to tell you everything except what's happening in the middle of Pittsburgh. So it needs to be sort of close to Pittsburgh in order to get a more full picture of what's happening in the skies around Pittsburgh. So yeah, that was something I just learned last week. It's just you always hear it on the news. They're talking about well, the Doppler radar says, but I realized it is an actual object. It is a giant white orb on a tower that sends out microwave energy.
So Yinzer Backstage Pass, of course, encompasses so much of this region, lots of venues. I'm thinking of Kennywood Park or PNC Park. They were both fantastic, but also a lot of products. You learned how to make Prantle's burnt almond tort, and then systems too, which I think is sort of unique, our recycling center. How do you choose where to go? And then, when you do get in touch with folks, what's the sales pitch?
Well, honestly, it's like walking through the city and just going through everyday life. I mean, like, putting your recycling on the curb. It's just like, where does this go? Flushing in the toilets. Like, where does this go? Getting the mail. It's like, how do they sort this? So, and I think I really like especially those really mundane ones because it's like, you can never imagine what that postal sorting facility is like. It's nuts. I've never seen anything like it. And it's just fun to think about it every day when I get my mail. And so
Totally.
I feel like there are just all these stories that present themselves while living your life in Pittsburgh or while walking through different areas. And oftentimes it is hard to figure out who to talk to. That's a challenge. Sometimes, especially with buildings, it's like, okay, you're trying to get in touch with the management companies that are based in Chicago or something. And you're like, how do I just find someone here who can open this door for us? And sometimes, like, you just can't. It's like one of the white whales that I've been after is trying to get into the steam tunnels underneath downtown Pittsburgh. And
I've heard they exist. Can you confirm that they do exist?
Oh, yeah, they exist. There's steam tunnels everywhere in this town. It's crazy. A lot of Oakland is still being run with the steam heat, with these huge tunnels. I mean, you see like the Cloud Factory in Oakland.
Yeah.
But that's owned by like a group of people that includes Phipps, that includes CMU, that includes Pitt, that includes the Carnegie Museums, that includes the library. So it's like, good luck getting 7 different people to agree to let you in there on a certain day.
So a lot of people have the keys that could open a door, but a lot of people have to say yes for you to be able to do it.
Exactly. And so it's challenging, and there's, I mean, like I have probably have like 50 email chains going. Some of them are slow burns, just trying to wear people down so they'll let us in eventually. Because I know we're not a top priority. It's like, especially, some of these places, okay, you want to get to the police and fire training facility. It's like, well, they've got other priorities. They've got like firefighters to train and make sure they know how to put out a chemical fire. They can't let us in this day. So a lot of the times you just have to be in touch for a while and it pays off. But now thankfully we've got enough episodes that I can be like, check out the website. We're legit. We've done this 100 times. You can see the places we've been to. We've worked with Alcosan. We've worked with, the Pittsburgh Water Authority. So if they can trust us, you can probably let us into, your basement.
Yeah. I don't know if this is your experience, but I feel like so often when we approach people in Pittsburgh, the question is like, it's less about who we are and more about like, are you going to respect what we do? Like, are you taking us seriously? And so I think it's a really interesting vibe when you approach people to ask them questions. Like, it doesn't matter how big your platform is. It's more like, are you going to be a real human and kind? And that seems to speak volumes here.
Yeah. And I think word's gotten around, and I guess as people move through different organizations, they get in touch and they see that we're not, it's not a gotcha or anything, we're not trying to catch anybody doing anything bad. We're just, legitimately curious and want to see, what they're doing and what they're passionate about.
So are there any spaces on your personal list that you haven't gotten to yet? You're still in the midst of one of those email chains, but like you really, really, really want to see it.
Oh my gosh, tons. Well, steam tunnels, Cloud Factory, those are 2 big ones. We've been trying to do stuff at the William Penn Hotel downtown, and it's like they're owned by a larger group, and so you have to try to convince them to show spaces that aren't normally shown, and so that's always tricky to sort of convince folks to let you in. I'm trying to do something right now with the Monroeville Mall, and I still haven't heard back. I've been trying to get into the Heinz Lofts to see if there's anything historic left there. And those are, again, like some of these people, a lot of these places are owned by people who aren't in town. So that's like, it's like next Pittsburgh doesn't mean anything to them. They don't know. They live in
that's a harder sell.
Cleveland. They live in Chicago. They live in Baltimore, whatever. So it's always tricky because then you have to just like, okay, I live in Pittsburgh. This is what we do here.
Mm-hmm. What about places maybe that other people, like fans of Yinzer Backstage Pass, have suggested to you? Any favorites among those?
Oh, yeah. I mean, a lot of folks. I remember a few people were saying we should go to the Clark Bar Factory, which is now so far away from Pittsburgh, though. It's like 2 hours away. I think it used to be...
it's that far. I knew it wasn't in the city anymore. Of course, there's still evidence of it. We have 2 separate Clark buildings and then the big Clark candy bar sign on the north side.
Right. Yeah, so people have mentioned that, which I would love to do, but it's so far that, we'd have to take a road trip. So maybe we can do that sometime. Well, and we've done some things. Like a few people recommended Dead Man's Hollow, which we did a couple months ago, which I didn't even know about. So that was a cool one. So we definitely listen to people's ideas. I just got an email right now, and one of them was really interesting. Okay, let me check. Hold on.
Tapping into Boaz's personal list live on the air.
a woman named Kim told us to check out the former Alcoa Research Laboratory in New Kensington, which I'd heard about, but I think that's another I got to look into, do a little more research. So yeah, people are always sending in great ideas, and please keep them coming.
Yeah. Any one or two that you would say just like were huge surprises to you? Like maybe immediately you weren't like, oh yeah, absolutely, but like they stuck with you, like for whatever reason.
Honestly, the post office sorting facility blew my mind. And they transport live animals there. I mean, there's like a section of that warehouse where they just had chicks and bees, and they're just there in this separate little area. I mean, it's crazy. And the amount of like smart conveyor belts that are moving in the way you'd expect, but then also in ways you wouldn't expect is just crazy, with all these like little trap doors opening and things getting sorted. And then if people's handwriting's too messy, it goes to a literal human sitting at a desk and they're just trying to, decode what it says. So that was great. And also Alcosan gave me way more access than I thought we would. We were like literally standing in a sewage tank. It was empty at the time. It had been emptied because they were fixing it. But they were like, yeah, you're the first person who's not an Alcosan employee to stand in the sewage tank, which was an honor.
Wait, so like how much footage did you capture then? Because the videos themselves are not super long.
Yeah, the final videos are all 8 to 10 minutes. But at each location, we generally spend at least an hour and a half and sometimes more. I mean, if it's a big facility we're walking around, we could be walking around for 2 hours. We're not filming that entire time, but it's not uncommon for me to sort of dump just all the interview bits themselves in, and it's like 50 minutes. Then I got to cut that down. And then, of course, on top of that, Annie, and I should mention Annie too, because she's the camera operator for all these.
Annie Cole.
So she I think she's been on because she has an Instagram, Houses of Pittsburgh. Also, she's great. And I also work with her at KDKA.
Yes. She wears many hats, just like you.
Yeah. Well, my wife jokes that Pittsburgh is like a low budget movie because they only have like 50 extras. So you just see the same people again and again. So
that's funny. I've made the same joke, but I called us HBO Max.
Yeah, exactly. So Annie, and then after we film, Annie will go through and then get all the B-roll, like at the close-up of that sewer valve or get the close-up of that bone at the, Natural History Museum or whatever.
Totally. And then, so how long from the time you shoot to it coming to air?
So it all depends. Sometimes we've banked them like 2 months in advance. Other times, if it's something topical, like we did one at the Nutcracker, it's like, well, that's such a limited season that we went and filmed at the Nutcracker and it was out 3 days later. But that's unusual.
Wow.
Usually it'll be a couple weeks.
Kudos to you and Annie.
Yeah. We're a small and nimble team. I set them up and then me and Annie shoot it together and then I edit it together and post it online.
Well, I'm sure a lot of your fans are excited to hear even more from you soon. To celebrate the 100th episode of Yinzer Backstage Pass, you've got a live event coming up at Bottle Rocket on January 25th. That is tomorrow. What can people expect at your live show?
Well, just a ton of fireworks and Steelers
Free drinks
are going to be there.
Popcorn in the crowd.
Yeah, meet the team. No, I don't.
Just kidding.
It'll be me, unfortunately, just me. But it'll be fun. We'll be showing some sort of like clips from the editing room floor. There's Alcosan I was talking about. We were there for so long that we had all these bits that I had to cut out of the episode. So we're going to show some of those. We're going to show a preview of an upcoming episode, which I think is going to be a fan favorite because we go to Kennywood with Brian Butko, who's like one of the expert Kennywood historians.
Yeah, Brian's a friend of the pod.
Oh my gosh, Brian's the best. And so we walked around the park with him and he's like, telling us about the history of different parts of the park. So we're going to show a preview of that. And Mr. Rick Sivak will be there too to sort of chat a little bit. And I think we're going to do a thing where he maybe brings a box of things from his office to sort of go through. So it'll almost be like we're Yinzer Backstage passing it at Rick's office.
I always love the, what's in your handbag questions on any Q&A. And I feel like what's in Rick's handbag, it would be an excellent time.
It's something good.
Well, what about you? Are you ready to be the belle of the ball?
Gosh, no, I'll tell you, it's embarrassing. They've been posting these meet Boaz posts. And I'm like, no one wants to meet me. I was like, so
many people want to meet you, Boaz.
I disagree. I think people like going behind the scenes and I'm the person who brings it to them. But if it was Yinzer Backstage Pass with, Jill Smith, I think they would be just as excited.
If Jill were as joyous and talented as you, that might be the case. Yinzer Backstage Pass is on YouTube and on Next Pittsburgh, and you can see Boaz on KDK TV as well. If folks want to reach out or maybe make a suggestion, how can they get in touch?
we've got a little like form on the Next Pittsburgh site. So if you go to the Next Pittsburgh site, go to the Yinzer Backstage Pass tab, and then they can just like fill it out and it'll come straight to me.
Awesome. Boaz, thank you so much, and happy Backstage Passiversary.
Thanks, Megan. Happy belated second birthday.
Thank you. That's all for today here on CityCast Pittsburgh. You can check out our website for this episode and so many more. It's pittsburgh.citycast.fm. We'll be back tomorrow morning with more news from around the city. Talk to you soon. Mary Lee, my water system came on right at the wrong time. But other than that, it was me.
Uh-oh. I got radiator heat over here. It's quiet.